On the 3rd of July 1971, in the city of Townsville, Queensland, Australia, a little boy was born named Julian Assange. When Julian is only 16 years old, we're in the middle of the 1980s. And even though the technology in computer is not as sophisticated as today, but Julian is already a hacker at this time. At the age of 16, Julian is at home behind his parents' computer, and this computer is what we call a dinosaur nowadays. But even with this ancient machine, Julian is able to hack some important websites around the world. Pentagon, NASA, Panasonic, and Lockheed Martin. Assange wasn't doing anything dangerous. He was just collecting knowledge about secret documents. When Assange is only 20 years old, he decides to hack the Canadian communication, but it was this time that they finally caught up to him, and the Australian authorities realized that it was him all along. But since he was only a kid and he was kind of doing it for fun and not to do damages, they only gave him 2 years in prison. In the year 1993, when they finally let him out of prison, this is when the Australian authorities pulls him aside and tells him, "You have to help us out. And if you don't, you can't live freely." He didn't get hired in the Australian police, but he would help them out when they needed it. It's during this time where Julian enters Melbourne University, and in college he creates a website called leaks.org. But he doesn't touch this website for the next 7 years, and we get to the year 2006. It's at this time that Julian is about to launch a website that every intelligence agency is going to hate him for it, because they are all about to be exposed. And this website is none other than WikiLeaks.org. WikiLeaks is somewhat like Wikipedia. Different hackers and different people can expose secret documents, and if it looks legit, they will be posted on the front page. But if it's fake, they don't bother. From the beginning, WikiLeaks website was doing pretty well, and anyone that had any access to secret documents, they kind of leaked it through WikiLeaks. And this is the reason throughout the world, the name WikiLeaks was being used in news agencies. Like WikiLeaks exposed this, WikiLeaks exposed that. But after this is when powerful people started to get suspicious about what WikiLeaks is doing and who is behind this operation. But the interesting part is that nobody could do anything about Julian Assange because he was only the operator of the website. The person exposing the files could be from Nigeria or Russia, we don't know. Julian Assange is just the owner of the website, and that's why they couldn't catch him in a legal way. But either way, the big dogs of the world were being pissed off, and they wanted to stop the owner of the website any way they could, so they started bugging him. When we get to the year 2010, a video is leaked on WikiLeaks that happened on the July of 2007 in Baghdad, where a US Army helicopter rains down fire on 18 civilians in Baghdad. And the worst part is, these were normal people and they were gunned down like they were rats. But when people saw this, they went berserk, and it made the US military and the US government altogether look terrible. Obviously, this video was top secret by the US military because of how terrible it was, but someone, some way or another, exposed the video on WikiLeaks. It was after this that the website WikiLeaks blew up around the world, and it was now known as the whistleblower website. Things were getting scary for WikiLeaks, especially Julian Assange, because Pentagon announced that this website is a national threat. But still, they couldn't do anything about Julian since he wasn't the one exposing these documents. He was just the owner of the website. This is when they started harming Julian Assange's personal life. Like for example, they closed every single bank account he's had, and whenever he went to open a new one, as soon as they saw his name, they wouldn't allow an account to be opened. So he was forced to go to Bitcoin, the first cryptocurrency at this time, so it's extremely cheap. So they were trying their best to bug with him without breaking the law. You have to know that WikiLeaks is pretty much like Wikipedia. They don't make a profit, so that is why they ask for money. Julian Assange was lacking funding for his website, so he wanted to find an investor to keep it afloat. He went to Sweden for this investment. Julian stays in Sweden, but he only stays there for about 3 months because he gets arrested because of sexual harassment to 2 different women. He doesn't show up to court, but he ends up going to London, so he never got fully arrested in Sweden. Nobody knew who's at fault. But right after this video of Baghdad got exposed, this is when Julian Assange's life turned to the worst. He was being targeted everywhere and being arrested left and right. A lot of people believe the crime they charged him with, meaning sexual harassment, is a very ugly crime. Like, for example, they didn't charge him with conspiracy or stealing. They did sexual harassment, so in the public eye, they don't respect him whatsoever. They wanted to make him look as bad as possible. But why did Assange go to the United Kingdom? Just because the United Kingdom will not turn in Assange to the United States for prison time just because they asked for him. If this was the case in Sweden, Sweden would easily give him up to the United States, but England does not. And that is one of the main reasons he ended up here. When they realized that he's in England, the British police went looking for him to arrest him, but they realized that he's hiding. Then all of a sudden, he ends up being inside the embassy of Ecuador in London. It seems like Julian Assange made a deal with the Ecuador government, but nobody knows what it is. But either way, they gave him refuge inside the London embassy. Even Ecuador's foreign minister asked the British government to let go of Julian Assange so he can come back to Ecuador. But the British government did not allow this. So he stays inside this little hole inside the Ecuadorian embassy of London, but he has everything accessible to him. He could not leave the building whatsoever, because if he did, the British police was waiting for him to get arrested. But since he was in Ecuador land, they couldn't do that. When Julian Assange is inside the embassy and he is living life in this tiny little shack, WikiLeaks website is very active and non-stop these documents are being exposed. Then we get to March 2017 when Vault 7 gets exposed. Basically, Vault 7 was everything, all the tools, all the hackers that the CIA had. This basically sums up different hackers hacking the best hackers the CIA had available to them, which was extremely embarrassing to CIA, seeing their quote-unquote best hackers getting hacked. Also, the equipment that the CIA had got exposed. In Vault 7, we realized that any microphone, any camera that's everywhere, the CIA has access to it with a click of a button. This is when WikiLeaks was on the bad side of the CIA as well now, and they weren't gonna let him off easy. On April 13, 2017, the CIA director is Mike Pompeo, and this is what he has to say about WikiLeaks and Julian Assange. He said that Julian Assange should be known as the enemy of the United States, and he should be treated as such. Pompeo also told his officers, whatever it takes, arrest this man. And don't censor yourself. If there's any legal trouble, I will take care of it. It didn't take too long before Washington and the other parts of the CIA shut Pompeo down, because what he was doing was very wrong. At least don't say it out loud, which is what they meant. In the year 2018, Julian Assange has been living inside this embassy for 6 years now, and it seems like the people of the embassy and the government themselves are getting tired of Julian, and some way or another they want to kick him out. Ecuador's government wasn't stoked to have Julian Assange around either, because on WikiLeaks there was a bunch of documents exposed that made the Ecuador government look bad. The government said, this guy has been living with us for 6 years, he doesn't even respect us, and still allows these documents to be exposed. In the year 2018, Ecuador government announces, if it is safe, we should let Julian Assange out into England. 1 year passes and nothing happens, until we get to April 2019. This is when President Moreno, president of Ecuador, announces that Julian Assange is not welcome in this embassy anymore. But Julian says, I will not leave. This is when President Moreno tells the British government that you have the right to enter the embassy and arrest Assange himself. It is interesting, the reason Moreno was so pissed off at Assange is that a few days before this, there was a bunch of documents that exposed him of being a crook, and he was not happy about it. They arrest him and they gave him 50 weeks in prison. 50 weeks has passed, even 100 weeks has passed, but he's still in prison. And the US government continues to ask for favors, and one of those is Julian Assange to be sent to the US. Since Julian Assange was arrested under conspiracy, they are allowed to keep him longer than the sentencing so they can continue looking at evidence. It's interesting because in the US, he's sentenced to 170 years in prison. But just like we said, the British government doesn't allow him to be sent anywhere in the world. So what happens to the WikiLeaks website with all these documents? The website is still open, but it's not active. The last activity was seen on the year 2021, and after that, the website has been pretty much turned off. If you look at the leaked documents on WikiLeaks, they add to more than 10 million different documents from every single nation of the world, but only the documents that were leaked until August 2021.